Right. So I think we're now on record. So,
Mhm.
Emma, thank you very much. Firstly, for joining us. Just to give a bit of an overview again, like I say, as part of Sequence Financial, where we're an accounting and finance recruitment specialist. We have started a podcast where we connect, sorry, with fellow professionals, finance professionals, sometimes even business mentors, etc., or where they can share their insights and advice to other people who perhaps want to go on a similar journey. And even if it's not the same journey, some of the principles of progressing and developing are the same across industry. So want to obviously connect with you and where you can maybe share some of your insights and advice. So I guess it might be useful just to start with a little bit of a like brief overview on your background and where you are currently and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. First of all, thanks, Sinead. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Um, so my background is originally from Pakistan, from Lahore actually. So born and bred there, and I I actually wanted to be an engineer, and it just happened to be, it wasn't the right time. So found myself in accountancy. So trained with EY in the Lahore office there, and that is essentially where I got my first opportunity to come out. So I came over to the UK on a short-term secondment way back in, I think, 2004, 2005. And then so I was offered a permanent position here. So once I completed my tenure with EY Lahore, I moved to EY Birmingham, and then that was basically my audit journey essentially kicking off further, and staying here. So so that's what I did, and did a few years, quite a few years actually, in EY Birmingham, then nearly 10 years, and then I moved to the industry where I am right now. So I work for Three, and I head up their strategic reporting and technical accounting and controls team. My remit is basically to look after any technical accounting and advisory pieces that come along, and looking at various strategic projects that we do. Um, so they come in all kinds of, say, shapes and sizes. So
Yeah.
that's what I look into. In that journey, I've worked on both sides of the accountancy table effectively. So I've been an auditor for a very long time. I then switched and became a client. So basically working in the reporting team, getting our accounts audited. Then I did a secondment into an IT transformation program, which was really, really good learning. And then I worked in our revenue team, and then I found myself in strategic projects, basically. So that's what I do now.
Nice journey. Nice journey. Interesting. One thing I'd probably want to start with there is though, like
Mm.
having worked, for example, in Pakistan and then coming to the UK and progressing your career here in the UK, then moving from practice to industry. Have you got any bit of advice that you can maybe start off with? Because talking to people, a lot of people, for example, there's two kinds of people. One, people who want to actually get their foot in the door of accounting and finance. Appreciate that's a long way back for you. But if you had to look at it from like a hiring manager lens, a lot of people, for example, let's say graduates or entry level people are trying to get into the field and they're struggling maybe to stand out. Have you got maybe any kind of advice of what someone can do to kind of stand out and give them the best possible chance to secure a career in accounting and finance?
So I think a couple of things. So if I contrast Pakistan versus here, the UK, or any kind of, like, more developed economies, one key thing is, for example, in Pakistan, we normally look after specialists. That's what people are after at the start. So you go in, you do your accounting degree, and then you go into accounting, and
Yeah,
that's where you are. Whereas over here, doesn't really matter what kind of degree you've done. So you can go into your professional accounting
yeah, yeah, yeah.
anytime. So what I and I really like that. I think it's good because it gives people an opportunity to do whatever they want in their undergrad and that stage of life. What I would recommend to people is there are certain basic and core personality skill sets and behavioral attributes that I think take people a long way. It's at that stage, it might sound competitive. It is, so don't get me wrong, it is very competitive, but people are not generally looking to hire an undergrad who already knows all about accounting, for someone who knows the standards inside out and whatnot, because that's not what the expectation is. What we're generally looking for is certain personality attributes, like, how good are you at presenting yourself? How good are you at communication? How do you present yourself confidently? Are you articulate? Do what's your attitude to problem solving? That's and you see that in a lot of these kind of like the psychometric analysis and those kind of tests that they're very
Yeah,
popular
yeah, yeah.
these days. And that's the reason why they have become so, because you roll back 20, 30 years, and it used to be more of a academic test. You go into a firm and they'll give you a test and say, do that, how much do you know about accounting and stuff. That doesn't matter because they'll teach you that. The the core ways of doing things, about how do you problem solve, how do you communicate, those are the kind of things which, if you bring along, then it gives you a step up. And what I do think is, and that's a tricky balance, is university, definitely have a good time, focus on your studies, but you're also there to learn from your peers and your year groups, and build those you know build those experiences, but don't lose sight of what your end goal is. So you've got to work hard. A good university matters. Those Someone who's coming out from, say, like, the Oxbridge, they do have an advantage. And it's not just because of the Oxbridge, it's the opportunities that they'll find there, the kind of societies and stuff outside your normal curriculum that people will do. And that so when we see those undergraduate CVs and we see people who've been on various societies and been, you know, valedictorians or head of this society or contributing to something like that, it's not just about the society. It tells me about the person. So, as a person who's willing to do more, willing to go ahead. You can't, unlikely that you can be, a part of a society and not contribute to anything like that.
Mm.
So all kinds of, like, and people come with some, and you see people come in, say, for example, with someone who's been, like, in hockey or rugby or something like that. So that tells me that can they work in a team or not. So
Yeah.
whereas someone else who comes along with maybe some experience on debates or dramatics or theatre, whatever, that's more of their artistic side. So those kind of things matter. So I would recommend that, people coming in, look at that advantage, do any internships and those kind of things that you can, fine, but focus on the soft skills as well. Communication, confidence. Particularly for me, I always look at how people approach problems. So that, for me personally, has always been a good one, is because that tells me about how people are likely to operate under pressure, how will they go about doing things. Some people panic, some people don't panic, and there's the pros and cons with everything. But try and bring those things out in your first CVs, first interviews. Interviews are important. Prepare for them, dress for it, go whatever you need to do for that. Put your best self forward, whether you want the job or not, or whether you have different opportunities lined up. Just give your best, and those things matter, I think.
Oh, I really like that. I think that what you said there gives a lot of reassurance to people, because I do see a lot of graduates or people trying to make a career get too fixated on, I don't have experience, I don't have experience. But what you said there is so great, that actually, if you're at university, I think people get too fixated even on the internship. But actually, when you're
Mm.
at university, like you said, sports teams, societies, all of these, a different part-time job unrelated to the industry, for example, all of those could be experiences where all those soft skills that you just spoke about, you could develop them. and use them as examples if you came in an interview process. And I think if you go in that mentality, you will probably be more confident in an interview, because I do feel a lot of people sell themselves short. Like a lot of people think, oh, I don't have experience. I don't have it, or they might actually be shy of some of the experience, which is a bit sad as well. They
Mm.
might think, oh, that job's not relevant. I won't put that on my CV. I don't want to put that there. But actually, yeah, I don't know if you, but I would just put as much as you can, because as long as you can show it to be a transferable skill, and like you said, at a graduate point, the expectation is quite low technically, right? Like you said. So the only thing that you can really be assessed on is those soft skills anyway, and those can be developed from anywhere, right?
Exactly that. And particularly for professional programs like accountancy, um, whenever you get into some place, they're going to teach you all of those things. That's the
Yeah.
part of the program. So you'll do your basic debits and credits, and you'll learn all the way through. Yes, if you studied it in university, you might be able to get through those exams quicker, but otherwise you learn the stuff that you can bring and get ahead of your peer group is all of the soft skills. I mean, I worked with a lady once, and she was really really good, and she came with a degree in geography
Yeah.
that has got no relation with accounting, and but it was just the way she approached things. She was very good at it. So yeah, so don't let the academic side of it hold you back or anything, because people, I think people are really good, and the graduates of today, they're a lot smarter than than what I was in my day. So yeah, I've got full faith in our new generation.
Yeah, 100%. I'd even go a step further and say, like, now you're seeing people just coming out of A levels and going straight onto a accounting scheme, or don't even have a degree, right? Like, so
Mm.
they, and it's still working out for them quite well. You've got lots of these apprenticeship schemes. So now it's useful bits of advice. Probably just like the last bit I'd say on there is like, you being the hiring manager when you're interviewing, so you've already kind of answered it, some of the soft skills you're looking at. Is there any bit of other advice you can give for someone to prepare for an interview well, like so they answer well? The reason why I just want to give an example is, like, I know you mentioned preparation, but we run a recruitment company, and I have had
Mm.
candidates who've gone into interview, and the hiring manager has said they answered everything brilliantly, but the answers were just too scripted. So there's always that risk of over preparing. So have you got any bit of advice on how best you can present yourself to give yourself the best possible chance of securing that role? How best to
So
prepare?
I would say two things. So I
Yeah.
totally agree with the scripting piece, because sometimes people go and they kind of like write down everything, whatever they want to know, and it doesn't come across very, it's yeah. Um, so what I would suggest is that focus on your communication style, because a lot of people. So I'll give you an example. So I interviewed for someone a while back, and I really liked it. So whenever I asked them a question, it was for a technical role. So most of those things were technical. Never once did they try and give me an answer straight up like that. They were very upfront to say, okay, fine, this is what you asked, so replay it back to me a little bit. Take a couple of minutes to think about it, and then gave me an articulate response. People sometimes get nervous that if I'm not saying anything, if I'm not filling the silence with words, then I've got a negative repute. And it really depends on the role. So I'm recruiting, if in that particular role, I'm recruiting for a technical person who can solve some technical issues for me. So their skill set is how do they analyze it, they're presented, and if they take their time to do that, that's fine. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So so that's one piece I would suggest. Have a think about how do you communicate, and what is your style going to be. I think people might have heard about it, but I really like the star methodology. So
Yeah,
think
yeah.
about your situation, and the task and your action and results. So I like that because that makes it coherent. The other side is pre- do your research about the company, which is fine, which is what people generally do, but try and do some research about the role as well. So, and that's the thing that sometimes, I mean, I've interviewed certain candidates would know a lot about three, but they haven't spent the time looking at what are the asks of the role. I mean, yes, we try and write a job spec so that it gives the maximum information, but it's never going to be perfect.
Mm,
So if someone doesn't have any questions about the job spec or the role, I'm thinking is like, have you really got it? Is
yeah.
this in line with your expectations? Does it meet your goals? Or, or are you just in it? Do you just want to get a foot in the door with three and then see where that takes? Which is fine. I mean, people do that. That's fine. But for me, generally is how people communicate, and that preparation piece is not just about the company, it's a little bit about the role as well. um, and then sometimes people just don't do any prep, which is disappointing to say. I mean, there's so much information out there these days about companies and stuff, and then generally, like, recruiters yourself, they are super helpful. They'll kind of help you and tell you about the company and the role, and to set you up with the best as you can, so make use of that.
Yeah, I really like the point you mentioned around asking questions as well, because I think a lot of people might treat the interview like a thing where they are being tested and they want to show like they know as much as possible, and perhaps think if asking questions might show like they might not know as much, but actually as an interviewer, that's a good sign, right? If someone is asking questions, that means they're inquisitive, they want to
Mm,
know more, and provided they're the right questions. But I personally think it's a bit of a red flag if you go to an interview, don't ask any questions, right? Because as the interview, you might come out there thinking, is this person even that interested? This is quite a big decision, right? This is a career move. Surely you want to check anything you
mm,
buy, right? If you go out and buy something, you ask questions. So
yeah.
if you're if you're not taking a job, if you're not asking questions, then it's a very good opportunity, I think, to give yourself a good chance to actually get the job as well, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if you agree, the
I think
questions
so.
you ask.
I totally do. I totally do.
Yeah.
Is the questions you ask, they also reflect on the kinds of things, and then sometimes that's where people get scripted as well. So they've already listed down two or three
Yeah,
questions,
yeah,
and
you can tell.
they're all yeah.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. And I just want to move on a bit then. Like, would you say, like, so say someone's in, obviously, you've had the benefit where you've seen like practice and industry, and you've progressed a career across different roles, progressed externally and internally. So, have you got any bits of advice on particular attributes that you've seen, like, that you've shown and other people have also shown to progress a career in finance, and any particular ones that you think really stand out as being quite important?
So, a couple of things I would say is you you really, and it's a difficult thing. It's very difficult, and I've not been great at it. I'm trying to get better at it, but really be true to yourself about your goals. What do you want to get out of a job or a role? Um, I mean, accounting and finance generally is, financially good. So that's a given. But what else do people want? And the reason I say that is depending on what you want out of it, that will help you determine your actions and your plans. The the skills or the behaviors that I've found useful is generally people are very intimidated by senior stakeholders. And I think most of the time that's just an impression. Because you haven't dealt with those guys on a regular basis, we we just don't know what to think, and they are in senior positions with limited amount of time. So we panic, and I've been there. I've done that. But once I you start getting that opportunity, you realize that most of them are really good people. They are nurturing people who take into consideration that your experience is probably not the same as what their experience is. So like I'll give you an example. My CFO, he's got 20-25 years under his belt, so he's seen a lot more. So as long as I'm honest with him, uh, he has always given me really good feedback and advice, and kind of like he's a little bit forgiving for some of the mistakes that I make. Everyone makes mistakes, so it's not about that. The problem is when you hide that mistake and you don't try to rectify it, you don't own it. So I think honesty has helped. So just be true, whatever you're doing. The other piece, which I've seen some of my peers and colleagues do, is they tend to become siloed. They would then go, okay, this is my job, this is all I'm going to do. So something else that comes in, not my responsibility, go to person X, go to person Y. I, rightly or wrongly, have said yes to whatever comes my way, because most projects, most things, they come with some kind of learning and an enhancement opportunity. Sometimes it's not great work, it's a lot of legwork, hard work, and those kind of things. But over time, you learn from those. And that's how you build your credibility with your senior stakeholders. And that path, I think, is very important. Because if your boss or your boss's boss sees you as a problem solver, as their go-to person, I think that leapfrogs you from your peers.
I completely agree. Like, I think when you mentioned the things about like people skills, I kind of look at it like this. If you want to progress your career, it's likely that you're probably going to become a people manager, right? Because the more you progress up, you're probably going to have to manage people, and you are going to have to deal more with senior stakeholders. And the technical skills probably don't become irrelevant, but might become less relevant, as in the softer skills get more and more relevant, right? So you're going to be assessed on how you deal with people. And I think taking those opportunities to communicate well with stakeholders are key, right? Because you could be a brilliant technician, but if a hiring manager and the the business doesn't feel that you have those people skills, I think a lot of people fall into the mistake. I've done a great job and I'm a great technician. I need to be rewarded with a promotion and progression. But
Mm.
sometimes it doesn't happen because they feel the skills that you need to succeed in that promotion you don't have yet. Those people skills. Like, am I understanding what you kind of mean as well?
No,
That's kind of
absolutely.
what I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, one of my mentors said this to me once, and I think it I mean it really resonated with me, is in your career, you've got to move from a doer to a manager to a leader. So when you're doing the stuff, that's where your technical skills are most relevant. So if you plot it on a graph, you'll see that your technical skill set, that's your foundation. That's what your everything is built upon. So that has to be there. There's no two ways about that. But what will happen is, like today, I don't know exactly what are all of the new pronouncements that are coming out and what they're going to say. I've got a team that I trust who will look into those things. What I need to know is when something comes along, is it appropriate? Is it reasonable enough? So, and that comes from my technical skill set and my experiences. So, once you've done those things, you've got to transition into a manager where you build your skill set around delegation. You let you learn to let go of things. Things will not be done the same way that you used to do. They will not be done to the same standard that you used to do. You have to let go of your own way of doing things and say, this is a goal, this is a task that needs doing. So, how best is that? As long as it meets that objective, however people have done it, that's fine. And if you let them do it their way, they're learning and developing as well. And that, for me, is your people management. You're looking after them, you're looking after the job and the task. That's how you start to do your teams and build your teams. And then you got to transition from that into a leader where you're inspiring people, where you're looking at the strategic pieces, where other people managers can look up to you and say, fine, this is a problem in my team, how can we solve it, or whatever else you need to do. So that journey, I think, is important, and that's where your technical skills, they remain there, but how much they're contributing to that role, that starts to diminish. And your soft skills, how you I think what I really find interesting is your circle of influence. So there's, as you progress through your career, that circle of influence, kind of like, it starts to get rings around it. So there will be
Mm,
people directly that you can say, here's my team, I can tell you what to do, fine. But then there will be tons of other people in the organization that you need to work with, but they don't report to you, they don't report to your boss, they might not be in the same department, they might sometimes not even be in the same company. You might be working with another company. How do
mm.
you influence them? And that all of that starts to become around people skills, your communication, how do you negotiate things, and those the softer skills and those attributes. So doer, manager, leader, that's how I would recommend people to think about their progression.
Absolutely. And like you say, take all kind of opportunities to show your visibility, right? Where you kind of said that how you've things that you've come across in your career you've not said no to. It's just another opportunity to show visibility because I think sometimes some people feel, oh, I've done this role for long enough now. I really want a promotion or move to a different role, but you can try and just look for other opportunities, right? So you've still got that role, but there might be a project, a mini project or whatever, where you maybe shadow another team or whatever. Just try and take whatever opportunity I guess you can. Have you got any advice on, because there are some people, right? And I don't know if you agree with this, who feel that they are doing a great job and they are showing these skill sets, but a lot of leaders, let's say of a finance function, they are, let's say, could be a key decision maker on promotions and progression, right? And to get that visibility in front of them in terms of who you are, what you do, and to be known about what a great job you're doing. Sometimes some people feel that they're not being recognized. You know what? I'm really good at this job. I do have these skills. I'm just not being seen. Have you got any bits of advice where someone could perhaps increase their visibility and help them progress?
So that's really interesting, and I think that is a very, how do I phrase it? It happens in every organization. So when I'll actually give you a very different example from my auditing
Yeah,
days. Because
yeah,
normally when you go out on a client site, there are a handful of people that you normally talk to. But what you could find out is very soon, if once you start talking to them, you'll find out that y- there are certain people who are the doers, who are actually doing the complicated work and stuff like that. And then you've got the leadership, be it like an FD or an FC or those kind of things, who are not doing it, but they understand it well enough to be able to explain it to you and negotiate and explain what the issues are, why the decisions were taken. And those two are very different things. So the doer is probably feeling that I've done all of the hard work and the crunch work, so I deserve all of the recognition because without me, nothing else is possible. Whereas the person who's in that FCFD role, they don't actually need to do that, but they need to understand it enough so they can figure out how that fits into the bigger picture and do that. Now, for that doer to be visible, I think one angle is communication. Go and talk to your bosses. Don't be afraid to have that conversation. Saying yes to projects, particularly challenging projects, helps you with that visibility piece. And I think that ability of generally just walk around the office, have a chat with people. I know it's harder in the hybrid world that we live in, but when you're out there, go and talk to people. Just try, and every time you send an email or a Teams message, is it easier if I just rock up to someone and have that chat with them? Because that's how you slowly start to build your profile. And
mm,
over time, you'll know more and more people, and then you'll see some more stakeholders, senior stakeholders, and things like that. So don't be afraid to have that conversation. I think, well, the world is imperfect. It will never be that the person who does everything else, that so I don't know, our chief executive, for example, unlikely that he's going to know everyone within the wider team and say, I
yeah,
know
of course.
Ahmed's doing this work, I know person B is doing this work. So you've got to kind of take the opportunity that you get, and make use of it. But that profiling, networking, being visible through these kind of things is going to help. and different organizations are going to have different opportunities. So you'll have some of the larger organizations will have teams for things like, say, I don't know, like an we used to have this entertainment club kind of people, say, who would go out and organize socials. Then we've got a gentleman who organizes our fantasy football league every year. So there's little things. Find something
Yeah,
that you like and get yourself known out there. So, and then you can just build on it. Don't get me wrong, this is time consuming work. And that's the piece that is hard. Is you've got your day job and then you go, oh, I've got to fit all of this in addition to that. And that's where I think it gets challenging.
yeah.
But yeah, don't be afraid to say yes, and don't be afraid to just rock up to people and have that conversation.
Absolutely. No, I love that bit of advice. And it's a good reminder to probably get comfortable getting out of your comfort zone, right? Because chances are, if you're a very good doer, let's be honest, perhaps it's also on you where you're not putting yourself forward to present the work as well. Because maybe you're technically very good and that's where you're comfortable doing the doing. And like you said, you feel like I'm doing all the work, but the onus is really on you to take the opportunity and say to your line manager, you know what, can I go and present that? Like, and chances are a lot of decent line managers will say, yeah, no problem, right? Like, but if you're not
100%.
putting yourself forward, and but that's just a way of definitely, I guess, doing it. And I know it's a bit unrelated, but for example, you recently had like the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight, and I know it sounds a bit weird why I'm mentioning this, but a lot of people say Jake Paul, he can't box, he doesn't know what he's doing. But look at the payouts he's clearing because he's recognized, right? It shows the power of being known. And do
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like, if people don't know you, unfortunately, it's likely you won't get what you deserve. So,
absolutely. I mean, if if you look at that, influencing has become a profession. We have
yeah, yeah,
professional influencers out there, and that's just being visible. If they're
yeah,
visible enough to enough people, then whatever they do, that sells, and they're there.
absolutely, absolutely, yeah. No, so I love that. Like, take any opportunity you can to make yourself known, and like you said, that can be such small things of just walking around the office and stuff, and just getting comfortable. I just wanted to actually move on to one part. Like,
Mm.
finance is so broad, and people can work in finance across so many different industries. Is there anything in particular? Because I'm just trying to think anyone listening to this who might be interested to whether it's to work at three or whether it's just work in the telecommunications industry in general. Do you think there's anything quite specific in terms of what it's like to work in a telecommunications company, like anything quite specific?
So I think all industries have their got specific niches,
Yeah.
and there will be some common transferable skills, for example. So, and attributes. Let me give you an example. Debtors, so receivables and those kind of things, they exist everywhere. Your revenue and growing your revenue and profitability, those are going to be key metrics for whatever business that you're working in.
Mm, mm,
As a finance person, your ability to get under the skin of those things will open a lot of doors. So, be it in a manufacturing enterprise, telecoms, an asset management company, you got to kind of figure out what drives those things. Being in the industry will give you a leg up on that. So you'll know because you're there. That if you're a new entrant, then just try to broil it down. Because at the end of the day, the commercial organizations and they are after profitability usually. Now, if we take telecoms as an example, the bit that I like is basically I like the tech side of it. I like it when people come around and say, okay, we're going from 3G to 4G to 5G, and what does that mean? And how does the networking work? And those kind of things. And then you layer on with all of the weird and wonderful world of connectivity that we've got, the IoT and those kind of things. I like that. So people who've got an understanding of what it is, I think that'll be helpful for anyone interested in telecoms. As an example, I think try and understand how the industry operates. It's basically a fixed cost business. So huge infrastructure cost to build the network. And then the more customers you have, the more benefit you can derive out of that. I know it's an excessively oversimplified equation, but you can take that and you can apply that to a lot of different fields, and you can apply that to telcos. So, but it's fierce competition. But I would suggest have a think about. in those angles and those attributes.
I'm just like thinking out like I've not worked in that particular industry, so like just
Mm,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd imagine things must change quite quickly, and you must have to be quite adaptable. Or or would you say that
100%.
that's yeah
100%. I mean, just just take one thing as an example. Just take your iPhone, or if you got an Android, you take that. Just look at the last 10 years of those. Those things have changed massively. I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, we were watching television or all of these programs on standard definition, and that was good enough for us. Now we're looking, watching it on 4K and Ultra HD and those kind of things. What does that mean for us is A, I need a better phone, a better screen, but I also need better connectivity, better bandwidth. So
Mm,
those things will keep on changing. Previously, we, I mean, all of them still offer you that, but I don't know how many people use it. But you can download episodes now from your Netflix account, as an example. People used to do that because I don't know, when I'm traveling, is connectivity going to be good enough or not? These days, you can just stream from pretty much anywhere. So you don't do that. Um, your hardware, for example, you needed, I don't know, 256 gig or 1 terabyte worth of storage space. Now, because connectivity is good, you put stuff on your cloud. You don't need to have it on your phone, you can access it. So, speed of change, absolutely. And with that, our customers change, our propositions change. So,
yeah
previously we used to talk about how many minutes and texts you get with your package. Now we talk about data allowances. And
yeah yeah
so yeah, it is change. It is very rapidly changing for a finance person, whether you're in commercial finance, analyzing propositions, whether you're business partnering, that ability to change is quite key. And it's not just the people who've seen it all and done it all. It's that ability to switch. People who can quickly break the problem down and say, okay, here's a new thing. What are its constituent parts? Let's break it down and see how I can add value. And similarly, for people who are more technical finance, for them there'll be new standards, new revenue recognition, new asset recognition criteria, and all of those kind of things which they can work through and do that. So yeah, I think there's something in it for everyone, and the speed of change is quite rapid.
Yeah, so if you broke it down to attributes, so like, so if that means for me as a finance person, practically, basically, potentially lots of ad hoc work, things just changing quite quickly, needing to be quite adaptable to that change. Is there anything else you'd want to add, like, for as a finance person, who, what kind of person it would suit and what they should expect working
So
in that environment?
I would say you've got to think about what kind of finance person you want to be. So
Okay.
if you are technical finance, for example, there are various standards and things like that that are coming out. So you would want to see what it's out there, plus how do you apply that to your business? So adaptability in that. If you're a finance business partner, then your old templates and models may not work. So that's where,
Mm,
as you say, your adaptability comes in. Your, I think the key attribute that I would say is being able to break the problem, break everything down into its constituent parts. Is what are we actually doing? What matters? So FP&A, take that as an example. So they are very good at analyzing the numbers, and then they come up with, okay, what is the story behind it?
mm,
Why are the numbers what they are? What are they telling us? You can only do that if you really understand the constituent parts. What were your
yeah,
targets based on? How did they? So that ability to break it down is quite important, because then that will enhance your adaptability, because you can constantly say, okay, this is something that I've seen before. I can tweak my template and it can serve this purpose as well. So that ability to change and adapt like that, I think is important over in any fast moving industry.
absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I appreciate taking a lot of your time. The last thing I probably just wanted to hit on is you would have worked with different finance leaders and seen quite a bit. What would you say are particular attributes to succeed as a finance leader that are quite important?
So I think clarity of thought is quite important in all of the leaders that I've worked with, and
Mm,
that connects to a number of different things. So ambition, where they want to see themselves, where they want to see their company. They're very clear on what they want. So do we want to grow, like, for us, for example, are we growing our business B2B customer line? Are we going B2C? Are we expanding on wholesale, or whatever we're doing, whatever their focus is, they are very clear on that. And that clarity of thought, I think, is important, because they can then translate it into their own goals, into their company goals, how it impacts their people, how their teams, what the structure needs to be around that. That is good. And the second piece I've seen, particularly from our kind of very very senior leaders, so people like who in the C-suite or who sit on the board, they are just not afraid of thinking big. I mean, we limit ourselves. We then go, oh, this is probably not something that I can do, or this company is too big. They just go out and say, why not? I mean,
interesting.
somebody said, I was in a conference a few weeks ago, and one of the keynote speakers, he basically said that you should always aim for the moon, because even if you miss it, you end up amongst the stars. And I think that is a good attitude to have in life, and that's what I've seen in most of the leaders. They are not afraid to aim big.
Oh, I love that. Like the thing that you mentioned about clarity of thought, I just think that if you aren't clear, what ends up happening is you probably change your direction, right? And people pick up on that. And once people pick up on that, your followers pick up on that, they will also lose confidence that do we even know where we're going? Whereas if you can have that
Exactly.
clear clarity and direction and you have conviction in it, it's always going to be ups and downs. But if you keep that same clear clarity of thought, if the followers know that, okay, we know where we're headed and the leader knows where we're headed, then they're going to have more conviction to follow. But if the followers kind of feel, oh, do we really know what we're doing here? They lose confidence, they get more anxious, and then that's when things like staff turnover, etc., start and the wrong things start happening, I guess, right? And yeah, I like the second point you mentioned because people say finance people and accountants generally are quite risk averse people, right? And
Yeah.
that's probably a thing to battle because to think big, because generally we're quite finance people, you might be quite an analytical person looking at all the risks, what could happen. That's a great skill, but perhaps in a leadership position, you almost need to have that little bit of let's not overthink the risks and just
Mm.
not overanalyze it, right? Which is it's a tricky balance, isn't it? Right, to get
It's
to.
very difficult. It's very difficult, as in the finance profession and the way finance is set up. A huge chunk of what we do is learning from history. What did we do last year? What is our 5-year trend? What is a 10-year
Yeah,
plan? And all of that kind of thing. It's always history, and we use that to extrapolate to our future. Whereas, kind of, you think about what we need to change is to learn from them. I mean, history is important. We learn from it, but still think out of the box. I mean, you know, uh, your I'm going to say that the touchscreen phones, they're a great example. They broke the mold from the buttons that were on there, because the buttons restrict you. It can only do what that tiny little button is programmed to do. So, I mean, a two can only always be a two or an ABC that's printed on it. Whereas if you think of it as, say, take it out, make it a screen, it can be a button when I want it to be a button. It can be a screen when I want it to be a screen. It can be a, I don't know, a gaming console when I want it to be. So that kind of, thinking outside the box piece is good. Is what we need, which we don't have in finance. Certainly, that's something that I try to learn every day. I'm not there, but people who come along with, and then that's the piece about saying yes and going out and talking to people. People will come along with, say, oh, hang on a minute, we're doing XYZ, what do you think? How do we account for it? I mean, you can give them an answer to say you account for it this way, but then you can also ask them a question: is why are we doing it?
Yeah, yeah,
Why are
yeah.
we in there? And that gives you a bit more commercial acumen, and then you can go away and think about those things. And I mean, I was asked a question once in ages ago talking about, can data be an asset? I was like, well, it doesn't tick any of the boxes that we're taught about, in our standards, but there's a value to it.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely. Look, I appreciate all your insights and advice. It's been great speaking with you. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will be able to take quite a bit away, whether they're trying to get into accounting and finance, trying to progress a career, maybe work in the particular industry that you're working in. So I really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, thanks very much. And yeah, maybe speak soon.
no
Thanks, Ahmed.
worries, will do. Thanks, Sinead. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.